Whether on the go or at the table, get lost in a conversation about everything coffee with your host, Eric Ortiz.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Coffee, a podcast that delves into the relationship of coffee with a variety of people, from manufacturers, cafe owners, coffee roasters, social media personalities, and so much more. This podcast takes on a deep conversation about everything coffee. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Pernicano, Head of Community and Product Education, Flair Espresso, starting his love of coffee as a home barista and coffee roaster for more than 2 decades. Soon the passion evolved into his own YouTube channel focused on reviews and guides for coffee lovers. During that same time, it came a successful Kickstarter campaign. You might have heard of it. In November of 2016, it's launched the Flair Espresso Maker. Started by Sergio Landau, founder and engineer, and a limited team, it was only a matter of time that Andrew joined that team as well. With a background in social media branding, Andrew's experience made him a great fit for a head of community and education of Flair Espresso. And since Andrew has been one of the driving forces of Flair, joining as an employee, working social media, product education and support, and the face of Flair. You can visit Flair Espresso at flairespresso.com, Instagram, Flair Espresso Maker, and on YouTube at Flair Espresso. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Andrew to the podcast. Andrew, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm good. Thanks. How are you doing, Eric?
I am good. We're both Mountain Standard Time boys here. It seems you're in that Mountain Time zone. I'm here in beautiful El Paso, Texas, the only city, by the way, that has the Mountain Time. Everyone's always like, "Oh, it's Central over there." Like, no, it's not. How's everything for you? How's life for Flair? How's it going?
Oh, busy as usual. I don't know if you pay attention to the trade shows, but this is kind of that busy season. We did Boston back in April, and then we all were out. The small team anyways, for marketing was out in Milan, Italy, for World of Coffee. So yeah, I think it feels like it's been a whirlwind, and they all sort of blend together. So going over there, the different time zones, dealing with the jet lag, and just kind of getting back, decompressing from the week and all that. So things are good. Getting our heads back into the game and back on the grindstone working.
Absolutely. I'm curious, Andrew. I from the standpoint of obviously being American U.S. citizen, seeing Flair more here, what's the take of Flair in the European market?
Yeah, that's it's a mix of things. In fact, Italy is an interesting place for us because it is, as you know, the birthplace of espresso and lever machines, and so that's what we have. And yet, we haven't seen the uptake yet in Italy. So there are some markets that are surprising. You know, we're doing well in UK, starting to get into the Nordic countries. Germany, we've had a partner there for quite a while. In fact, almost as long as we've been in business. And France has been really good for us too. So we're trying to build out a partner network over there. And that's part of why we go to the World of Coffee and hopefully meeting some new partners. We did get some pretty good leads and kind of working those through right now. Hopefully getting ourselves, I think with Instagram, the beauty of that is you get a presence and exposure across the world. It sort of transcends boundaries and borders. However, it's still quite costly to get products, if they try to order direct from us. So we're definitely trying to build a network out there and make it easier for people that know about us, have been wanting to try us, but just currently don't have a local reseller in their market, in their area.
Well, I'm curious. Flair has that feel to me, having seen it so often on social media, having the reputation it has. It feels like it's been around for such a long time, to be honest with you. But yet it's only been really since 2016 when the Kickstarter started, and you weren't part of that, but then you joined a little bit after that, joining the team there. And it really just took off. And now it seems that there's been just this hype, and we'll talk about the products itself right now, and we'll talk about my own experience as well with the Flair 58. But what has been this whirlwind for Flair itself? How's it all taken off?
That's a lot to unpack. I would say, like you said, a lot of people have seen the product, but it's an internet only business. At least for us, we don't sell at brick and mortar, and many of our partners do not as well. There's some cases where they do. So for a lot of people, they and that's one of the first questions I ask when someone shows up at our trade show booth or one of the festival booths is, have you seen Flair before? Are you aware of the product? And usually most of them, when we first started, it was like, no, never seen this before. What is this thing? And like, it's funny because it's elemental, it's a lever, and yet it still looks a little bit strange, a little foreign, because it's so Spartan, so bare, so devoid of the bulk of a traditional espresso machine. But nowadays, the answer is almost always yes. I've seen it. I've been wanting to try it. I want to, see it myself or taste some espresso from it. So trying to figure out how to get our products into the hands of more people and into places where they can be demonstrated, because sometimes people are like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it makes espresso. It can't make good espresso. It's just, for whatever reason, they have a hard time wrapping their head around, such a simple machine or mechanism doing that. And so, trying to figure out how to get more people to have some experience in these trade shows have been good, but those are generally B2B as opposed to B2C. So festivals are a good opportunity. One of the coolest things we did there in Milan was actually after hours. We had a competition. It was our first, I guess, you could say our inaugural competition with a Flair. And we had, I think, I'm trying to remember, maybe 12 contestants. And we had with Comandante grinders and our manual espresso makers, and pretty much everybody that competed had never seen a Flair, in person, all just kind of YouTube stuff and Instagram. And so it was really cool to see everybody like trying to figure it all out, like in the moment and competing at the same time. And it was great to see actually a lot of them really did well with that. In fact, the probably the highlight was the winner of the competition wasn't even a barista. She says she's had no experience in coffee personally, and so espresso. Some people would say espresso is hard, right? Like, and then you throw in like a manual machine where you can't just push a button and let the machine do it for you. You have to actually modulate the pressure, and control things in a bigger way than the super automatics. And yet she crushed the competition. So it was cool to see someone, most of them had no experience at all with the Flair, but this is a person that didn't even know how to make espresso before, and she slayed it.
And I'll tell you, I having used the machine, and I had not used it prior, and in full disclosure, Flair sent me a demo, not to keep, not to anything. It's being sent back. I'm using it. I'm getting accustomed to it. It is a unique experience. I will tell you that. I've owned a lot of machines in my past, and this is the most unique experience I've ever had. It's very, very visceral. You get that reaction of pulling a shot, and you can feel it, and it's just something that I can't explain. And I wish a lot of people that have never actually used it and don't necessarily understand how it works can really try it, because it really is such a strange feel to see it kind of come through it, and kind of an accomplishment also. Every time I pull a shot with it, Andrew, I'm always kind of like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm always kind of thrown back by it. And not only that, but it's making some amazing shots. Some shots that, and I also have a dual boiler Breville, and I'm not getting some of these flavors even with that. You're able to kind of almost do a little pressure profiling, just based off of your own movement. So I can see how that competition winner got through without having experience, because it's just that easy, but also there's so much more to it. I'm curious. I know that there's competitions out there nowadays for like AeroPress. Has there been anyone that does something like unique with a Flair product that changes a recipe or does something strange with it?
So funny you should ask. But first, let me just say that's awesome to hear your experience. And I do agree, like there's a certain intuition, and you keep using the word feel, and you definitely do, right? You have to feel it. And we joke about using the force. And I think some way, like the reason why she crushed it is because she didn't come with any preconceptions, and she was really trying to connect with the device, with the machine, and feel her way through it. Whereas and I'll be interested to hear later on when we get there, like your experience and some of the challenges you found, because we've seen that actually those people that might be most familiar with, making espresso with a 58, millimeter basket on a commercial or semi-commercial or prosumer machine are the ones that struggle the most, because there is quite a bit of nuances and things that you have to feel, you have to intuit, and they're used to having success with whatever it is that they use at, say, the cafe as a barista, or at home like you with the Breville Du Boiler. And it's not one-to-one completely. Like you assume like, oh, whatever I was using, if I'm using the same basket and the same dose and the same coffee over here on this machine, will I be able to just pull it the same way? And one thing that they quickly find out, especially with the 58, and as you know, we have 5 different products, and they're all different in capacities and size of baskets and such. But with the 58, which is the most familiar, I would say, to the barista and someone like yourself, they'll find that they have to grind a lot finer. And they'll also find that the shot will flow a lot faster and generally on the 58 because, the way that the water sits, that column of water sits on the puck. The moment you fill the chamber and you lift the valve, you have the valve plunger. So when you lift and you put the water there, anytime that you're spending, I don't know, some people take a little bit of time between when they add the water to when they start to pull, and you're pre-wetting and your water's getting in, and then you do a slow ramp and you're slow ramping and that water goes right into the puck. It's not, like headspace that needs to be filled the way that a normal machine would do, like a pump machine with a rotary, where it's got to fill that headspace. You've got to displace the air that was there. And there's different mechanics going on, and generally they also come in with a lot more pressure. So they kind of slam the puck and say 9 bars, maybe 10, maybe even more with certain machines. When you slam the puck, you're not going to get the water through that puck as quickly in the same way as with like when that column of water sits there and starts to saturate. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things I would say that somebody who has experience will find a little bit more challenge or struggle, because they're trying to just make whatever works on that other machine work over on the 58. And you know how it is, like you kind of bang your head against the wall. Like, I know this works over here. It should work here, and it won't. And instead of just going back to the basics and what you learned about espresso theory and starting from scratch, they kind of want to make whatever it is they learned or understand work. And you have to go back and work from the bottom up. And so someone like that person that won the competition, she didn't have any preconceived understandings or notions or how it's supposed to work, and she just kind of felt her way through it. So, wow, I got off on a tangent.
No, you're good. I mean, it's like I said, I wish people could experience it themselves, because it really isn't anything like some of the videos show. It's such a strange feeling. I've seen some of your reviews and actually like the product demonstration, and I like the gentle pressure you're placing, but it's also kind of you're understanding how your own body's kind of moving to the product. So you're feeling it. And I think that's the whole idea, where you can't just slam onto it and think that it's just going to work out the way it's going to. It's just not. I've seen YouTubers using the product as well, being like if you're just not careful, all of a sudden you're just going to shoot a hole right through that bed. Because you put too much pressure. So you really got to gauge it, and you're looking at the gauge as well for those that have that part of it. And it's just such a cool thing, because you're trying to kind of start off with a little slow drip and building up that pressure. And before you know it, here you are, and you're making some pretty darn good espresso. So any kind of error I've made, I will say this: it's not been because of the product. I have made quite the mess a couple of times where I've been like, you're such a dummy, because I just totally realized the workflow is so different. So you're absolutely right. Someone that might not be doing this routinely, and someone like myself that I just push a button and, here we go. This is such a different routine, but it's not so much more where it's not, cumbersome or something of nature. It feels natural to fill it up. It's getting heated up as well with the element in there, which gets hot so fast, by the way. I am so impressed by how hot that gets. And I've seen those temperatures that's supposed to hit, and I have it to max for mine. But I'm just floored by it, Andrew. I really am. I've never used it. I really like it. It looks pretty cool too. I admit it. It's not as small as it sometimes looks, but then it kind of minimizes itself once it's kind of not in use and you don't have the lever up. So it's kind of an interesting product. What is the flagship for Flair? Is it the 58 or the 8?
The 58, yeah. It was the Pro 2 prior to the 58, but now it's the 58. I'm sorry, what was that? I'm pretty sure I didn't answer your question at all. The one that you led with, and then I got sidetracked. If I
I don't even know, Andrew. I'm just floored by it.
Yeah.
I think the question I had was has anyone done anything unique with the Flair?
Yes,
like, how there's the AeroPress competitions.
Okay, so there was a barista league that used the product, used the 58. They sent it out in season, I won't remember the season. It was maybe season 2 or 3 or something. But they basically sent their contestants the 58. And one of the challenges was make espresso with something other than water. And because, and that's kind of the beauty of the product of these open boilers is you can put whatever you want through them and you don't have to worry about like gumming up the pipes. Well, to some extent, right?
Yeah,
so the pressure gauge itself, it senses pressure because there's basically a tube or a canal that goes up to the gauge. And so you could get some stuff in there, but you can clean it out pretty quickly. But a normal machine, like with a reservoir and such, if you were to put anything into there, it gets into these tubes where you'll never really access and clean through. So you have to be really concerned, especially if it's a boiler, you have to be worried about the type of water. And people that want to roll their own water, play with that, or play with something like the Lotus product that Lance Hedrick is a co-founder for, or Third Wave Water, or any of the other ones, Peak Water. People want to dial in like they dial in for their filters, and you can't really do that with an espresso machine because you have to be careful with what goes in there because you also don't want that water sitting around. You can have some issues there. So the nice thing about these open boilers is you can pretty much put anything through them, and there's not a risk of damaging the boilers or to have it cleaned out. So anyways, this particular series or episode was, do what you can, make something cool. Some people were putting soda, like Coca-Cola. I'm trying to remember all the crazy stuff. Someone put oat milk in there.
Oh, wow.
And I wouldn't say poor Lance. So Lance Hedrick had to be the judge for this.
Oh, poor guy. He had to.
he had to replicate all these recipes, and some of them triggered a gag reflex, I think he said.
Oh no.
And some not so much, but I wouldn't say this was like award-winning espresso, but it was certainly a fun exercise. And like, what can you do? How can you make, and try to balance between like the overall cup flavors and getting a good extraction. And that was fun. So yeah, as far as like, they put some crazy stuff. So go check out the Barista League, look for the episodes with the Flair 58 and see what some of the zany concoctions they came up with, because they had a lot of good fun. It was fun for us to
that
watch
sounds
as
like
well.
fun. That sounds like a good time, but also horrible for Lance. Just horrible.
Yeah,
poor
I don't
guy.
think he knew what he signed himself up for until he had to replicate the recipes and stomach those.
Curious, Andrew. Now that the product's been out for some time, what's been the reaction to it? I know it's still growing around the world, part of it, but how's the reaction to it still here, where the market is a little bit more saturated with it? How is like Flair building up on a product that doesn't necessarily lend itself to big product changes or evolution?
Well, I don't know if you'd say it doesn't lend itself to big, because if you look at the original, we call it the classic now. It's that. Yeah. We've come a ways, right? So that didn't have a removable spout. It didn't have a bottomless portafilter. It didn't have a gauge. It was a 40 millimeter basket. It was Spartan. They're all kind of Spartan. I use that word, but generally speaking, we've evolved and we've innovated and changed. We've went from that to the Signature, from the Signature to the Pro, from the Pro to the 58, where we included that heating element, as you were talking about, with the preheat system, which is mainly, again, just to keep the unit temperature stable so that you can you don't have to worry about the preheating like you would on the other standards. You have to make sure that you get the brew group up to temperature before you start to brew. Otherwise, you're going to dump a lot of temperature into that metal, right? If you start with cold metal and then add the hot water. So I would say that there's still iteration and innovation that's going on with the product. But I think in general, with the 58, it's probably, yeah, I think you won't see a whole lot of more innovation going on anytime soon, because we feel like we've accomplished what we wanted. And then with the Neo that came later, we wanted to offer, espresso to everybody at every price point. So the Neo started at 125, and the 58 is 575. You can get the 58X without the electronics for I think it's 85. And that way, anybody at any level with any grinder and any budget could, try their hands with espresso. And prior to, I would say, the last several years, for the most part, the last 4 to 5 years, there hasn't been a lot of good options under the 450, 500 price point for good quality espresso. And it's gotten a lot better with companies like Breville, and then all the other ones making, in our manual space as well. But that's been sort of the movement, is to ensure that everybody with every means can get into espresso, because most people think that espresso is real expensive to get it and to do it right. And I think that's been a surprise for anyone. We get it all the time. People have like a Linea Mini, and they, that's expensive. I forget what the cost is, but those are $2,000-$3,000, and people
they're horribly pricey sometimes. I'm curious about that, Andrew, because obviously it feels like it's been most recent. I know products have existed under that price mark, and Flair's been under that for a while now. And this is obviously a quality piece of equipment. It is equipment. It is long lasting. I've seen people that still review the original that still holds up to this point. I mean, it's made out of good material. It's not cheap. If you get to see a 58 in person, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to break on you. Let's just say that it's steel. The handles are authentic. The product just feels like durable. But what do you think that movement has been? Has it just been to tap into a market that's been kind of like the Nespresso market that really hasn't really tried fresh coffee, and maybe, that's the reason why these little machines show up at the price points? And then is that where Flair's trying to tap into, or is it trying to tap into the big market of you've tried it now with a machine that's $2,000-$3,000, but have you tried it from a machine that's $500 to $600?
I would say so. You've seen the robot that's from Cafe Lot, and that's modeled on a manual machine, manual maker from 40s or 60s. So it's not like this is like manual makers are a new product. It's just they kind of ebb and flow and come and go. I feel like there's something of a what do you call that? Help me with that. A renaissance of sorts.
Sure.
It's coming back into fashion and popularity. There was the Rock that's been around for 15 years, I think. And they sort of enjoyed that category and that space by themselves for quite a while. And then the last 5 to 10 years, it's been quite a few new entries that have jumped in. And I'm not quite sure why the ebb and flow happens, and why now again, it's back to this resurgence of manual machines and makers. I would say though that like the whole, with COVID and back in 2020, and people got cut off from their life support, like from the coffee, and people, some people really do need this stuff, to function.
Sure.
Or some people just have a relationship with it. And in all cases, they got cut off. And that, I feel like that was a big boom for just anybody that's making these home coffee and espresso products, getting those into the hands of people that are at home and working from home and don't have the access. And so for sure, the last couple of years have been great and a big, big boom for everybody that's making these kind of home products. And now people are getting back out and they're kind of mixing it up. And then you have inflation, and the war and everything else that's going on that's getting, it's starting to cause everybody a bit more cautionary with their spending. So I would say that it's kind of slowing back a little bit there as well. But with Flair and the products, I would say, getting back to your question, I think it was more about, if you go back to the Kickstarter days, it was about how how much is really needed to make a good espresso? Like, what can we strip down your average espresso machine to just the basics, and more of in the soul of like a filter or a drip. People use like the V60s and any of these other brewers. It was kind of like we could do that with espresso, and it hadn't been done in a while. There were some products, but trying to kind of strip it down and come out with a product that was as affordable as you could get to make legit espresso. I think that was sort of the initial impetus of the product and the company was to just how cheap can we do this and not sacrifice, not compromise. And so the original Kickstarter, I think they were selling for $135, the classic. And obviously with, supply chains and everything being what it is, we've had to, and the cost of materials and getting all that, it's come up a little bit, but still like $135 a legit espresso was pretty unfathomable, I think, at the time. And it was still cheaper than what was already out there as far as, Rock and some of the others that were making good espresso. So,
and I agree that the Flair 58, obviously the 58 millimeter portafilter that comes with it just takes it to that next level of getting a full professional shot of espresso coming out of that machine and being the quality it is. And what's the branding of Flair like? I mean, obviously you're the face of Flair. You're everywhere on YouTube. You're on Instagram. You're very active. What's been the strategy for you trying to help promote the company and the machines?
Education. I think that's been, so I look at myself as an educator. And so from the get-go, I felt like I was there to try to help our customers get to better espresso, but also to be a resource to anyone. Like we have our YouTube channel, and during the pandemic, we were running hour-long classes to anybody that was picking up an espresso machine direct from us. And I would, those classes could be anywhere between 10 and 20. And then afterwards, we put them on YouTube and, just label them as beginner espresso, guide to espresso, that sort of thing. And I find a lot of people are watching that aren't even Flair customers yet or at all. And they learn something from that, I hope. So it's more about delivering value, providing education, having people, especially like I said earlier, people that I feel like baristas, they get great training on the equipment that they have in the cafe, but I feel like they don't all get the support and the education they need to like understand the fundamentals of espresso, the theories. And that's kind of what we're trying to do is to give people the basics. If you learn how to make espresso with a Flair, because of all the variables that are under your control that you have to master, everything from temperature to pressure to, the puck prep. Once you master that, I think you can go to any machine because you've learned the fundamentals, you learn the basics. Whereas I don't think it goes the other way. I think someone who has this expensive equipment and somebody trained them up on it and said, hey, just stay grinding in this range and use these ratios. And they get really good at that. But if you kind of give them a whole new system, a whole new grinder equipment, they might struggle with it because they never really figured it out from scratch. So I guess, as far as like what's been our mission and our goal is to teach people about coffee, about espresso, just from the ground up and give them the tools they need, whether it's, we see that as well. They start with a Flair and then they move up to other machines, and that's awesome. And I think without having spent that time with our product, they probably wouldn't be making as good of espresso with that other machine as well, just because they started from, understanding how every little variable makes a difference in the output, the result.
And we know that we've talked a little bit about the Flair, the 58X, but you have three other products in the line that don't do the 58 millimeter, but still pull amazing shots as well. What are those aimed for the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I mentioned earlier on, we try to have a product for every category, for every affordability. And we like to look at it. I think James Hoffman called it like an ecosystem, which is a great way to describe it, because the goal is to meet you where you are with your current situation. You might be in the dorm room and you might want espresso and you don't have a lot of space. And that's where like our products really go and shine in like small apartments, small dorm rooms. In fact, one of our new employees, Tanner Colson, from Tanner Colson Coffee on Instagram, we picked him up and he was rocking in his dorm room, and he had a very limited space and a small desk and he had to work from. And, so like compartmentalizing and smaller, having products like this is great for that type of person. Someone who has a limited budget, right? Like grinders, a good grinder, it's shocking, I think, for a lot of people to find out that a good grinder can cost you $250, $350, $400 for espresso anyways. Like you really have to get a quality grinder that is able to control, down to the microns, the size of your spread of your coffee. And a lot of these grinders only have maybe 15 or 20 clicks. And when you do that, you don't have enough. You have a range, right? You can go from quote unquote Turkish or espresso all the way up to French press. But once you get in the ballpark, you can't make small adjustments anymore because that next click is going to throw you out and you're going to get another 15 seconds or 20 seconds of a shot and maybe no pressure at all. And so we try to, so say you come in and you don't have a big budget. Well, the Neo is perfect for that. That's our lowest priced product. And the idea there is you're using a pressurized portafilter, which we call the flow control. And the goal is, get the best coffee you can. And if you don't have a great grinder, you should still be able to make a good espresso out of it. And hopefully when you get the money to step up to a better grinder, now you can swap out that pressurized portafilter with a non-pressurized portafilter, and you can play with your dose and your grind and really get the pressure based on that. And then of course you modulating the lever. And then that would be, say, you're moving into the Classic now. The Classic is pretty much the Neo. Say they use the same brew heads. It's just a portafilter that really changes and, some cosmetics and looks. And then you want to step up from there. You go into the Signature. Signature includes the pressure gauge. And you can always add the pressure gauge to the Neo or the Classic. But until you're we don't recommend the pressure gauge for someone who's still using the pressurized portafilter because it's really not you in control. It's that mechanical restrictor that's controlling the flow. But once you get into a bottomless portafilter or a non-pressurized portafilter, which we offer with the Classic and the Signature, now you're controlling these things. And so you step into the Signature, and it's got a nice premium feel, copper plated portafilter. It looks a bit like the Pro. It's got that gauge. And, from there, you want a little bit more volume. You go step up to the Pro. The Pro has from the 40 millimeter portafilter, you move into the 46 millimeters. So you can put more coffee. I think most people find that they're maxing out at 16, 17 grams, depending on the coffee that you're using with the Neo, Classic, and Signature with the smaller baskets. But once you jump into the Pro, you can get into 20, 22 grams, depending on the coffee. So you have that and then more volume. The actual brew cylinder holds more water. So you can get bigger shots out of the Pro. So I'd say like you're maxing out at 35, 37 grams out with the standard portafilter. And then when you jump into the Pro, you'll be able to max out at say 55 grams out. We're talking the espresso, the yield there. And then from the Pro, you jump into the 58. So we have like the five different products. And again, it's sort of like your budget and whether or not you have a grinder that can do the work for you, or whether you need the pressurized portafilter to do the work for you. And
let me say, if you're just going to do it right. Get the 58. I'm going to tell you right now. And I know that you all have the other product line, and this is me speaking. I'm not talking for Flair, but just talking from someone that makes coffee daily and been around it for a while now. If you're going to do it, just do it, with the Flair 58. I got to just say it's a good product. It really is. It's fun. It's interesting. It's not hard at all. It's a unique process. I'll give you that.
Let's be fair. It's not easy. It's not hard, but so it's funny because we have a little insider rivalries or jokes between the team. We've got Team Pro and Team 58 here at Flair. We have a few team members that still prefer the Pro over the 58. And,
really?
Yeah. Well, so with the deeper basket, the smaller basket, it's also deeper. So you're packing in that same 18 grams, say, on a Pro in a taller pile of coffee versus like the 58, where it's spread thin across a wider basket. And with that, it requires, the grinder itself. It's more demanding on the grinder. It's more demanding on you and your puck prep. We always say that the deeper baskets and the taller piles of coffee basically are more forgiving. If you do have a channel or something that opens up, it usually heals itself, or you have enough coffee, like a depth of coffee, that it's not likely that channel is going to run from the top to the bottom. But when you have a really thin cake, like you do on a 58, and you get a fissure or a break, that you can just like pour water right through that pretty easily. And so, yeah, you can, I would say the 58 is more challenging, certainly more challenging than the other products. And so for some people, if they want, you want a good shot of espresso, but you also don't want to, I think you get more good shots from, say, like the Pro or the Standard than you would on the 58, just because you really have to be on your game and you have to have a better espresso grinder with the 58. So I wouldn't recommend it for everybody.
All right. Well, we'll give Andrew this one, but if you want to be snob like myself, you get the 58. And this way you're making more, there is more risk, obviously, prepping it. There's a lot more variances that if you don't have the right grinder, if you're not prepping it right.
I would say if you have other people in the house that you're making espresso for, the 58 is definitely the way to go, because it's much easier to go back-to-back shots. The thermal stability of the electronics make it so that you don't have to really focus on the next shot and the next shot and the next shot, keeping everything hot. Also that handle, like, the portafilter has a handle. It's easy to like bang out your puck and keep going. There's less hands-on. You don't have to, with the Standard and the Pro, you assemble and disassemble the brew group, for each shot. With the 58, it's locked in. You're just locking in a portafilter and filling it up and pulling the lever. So if you're doing back-to-back shots, 58 is definitely the way to go. Definitely.
Andrew,
I feel about it.
No. Well, yeah, I mean, hey, you're the education guy. I'm just looking at it the point of view where I'm like, hey man, 58's the way to go here. But you guys have a lineup, like James said, it's an ecosystem of different products for different kinds of people, different workflows as well. So whatever fits your need, there are 5 different price points. All of them make delicious espresso. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Jump in real quick. The one thing I don't think I sewed up on that ecosystem idea was say you buy the Classic and you start with a smaller brew head, you can go from brewing with the Classic to brewing with the Pro. And that's where the ecosystem, you can basically start with the Classic, and then you can add the signatures, PGK, we call it the pressure gauge kit. And then you're brewing like the signature. And then say you want more volume, more shots, bigger shots, you can basically upgrade to the Pro's brew head. And then you can just use the Classic's brew lever stand for the Pro brew head. So you won't have, say, the look of the Pro, but you'll have the same, in terms of like the copper and the black and the stainless steel two-piece tray. You could always add all that, but you can basically dress up your Classic to a Pro if you wanted to. So that's kind of where the ecosystem comes into place. You can't jump from a Standard or a Pro to the 58. It's a completely different frame and everything, the mechanics and to have that.
So there's growth at the bottom part of it, but not necessarily up all the way to the 58.
You can step up. So that was the idea, is meet you where you are. So say you had the budget for a Classic, start there, and then from there you can build and upgrade your system as money comes in or your desire to go bigger.
Every time I've talked to you, and it's been just a little while here, we haven't known each other for a long time, but I'm always kind of excited to talk with you because I can feel that passion of what you bring and that excitement to the brand itself. What is it with Flair that makes it so fun? Because every time I talk to you, it always sounds like you're enjoying it. It's not, I mean, work is work. I get that, but you're enjoying this.
Well, hopefully the goal is right for everybody is to enjoy what you do. And certainly as you opened up and mentioned, like, I've been a home brewer, a home roaster, for 20 years and more. It's just, I don't know where it came. I guess, the family business, we had a restaurant business in the family and it's still going on, Italian restaurant business. And I remember seeing my grandfather had this very gaudy, big Gaggia, with his name on it. And, that sat in the kitchen or in the dining room. And I remember, I don't know, maybe that's kind of got me hooked on espresso, where the passion kind of started was sort of in the family. I remember making terrible cappuccinos and espresso for my family with like a Krups, which was like a steam espresso maker, one of those get at the garage sale.
Yeah.
Just the worst. Not only was the machine bad, but obviously the coffee I was using back then. But and they would all drink it with a smile and begrudge it for me. But I don't know. I've always had that passion in that. And so, yeah, it wasn't my time in coffee only started with Flair, and it's been great for me because I'm an educator and I enjoy having that opportunity to educate and to share and to build community. And so that's kind of where it comes from as well, that passion. But what the Flair system offers is the people that want to get closer to their coffee, and same with roasting. I think that's a nice connection there too, is if you want more of a connection and really get your hands into it, you have that opportunity. If you're just pushing buttons, I feel like you don't, like you said, you feel it out with the Flair. And so there's just this hands-on. If you're someone that enjoys crafts, if you enjoy building things, if you enjoy DIY, if you enjoy, I used to break things apart just so I could put it back together. And I feel like there's this really visceral sort of connection with making coffee with these manual brewers, whether it's, espresso makers or any of the others. And that's what I gravitate to. You won't find too many. Yeah, you won't find any, actually.
I couldn't agree with you more. Andrew, where can people find more about Flair?
Well, where best found is on Instagram. I mean, that's kind of like where it started, and where you can still DM us, Flair Espresso Maker. There you'll find at YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, it's just Flair Espresso. We couldn't get Instagram Flair Espresso for some reason. So yeah, just DM us there. Find us at if you have the product, you have questions, or you want to get more information, flairespresso.com. Use the contact or the chat widget, and you can get to us directly as well there.
Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have been nothing but grateful for Flair, yourself, and an amazing product, and I'm very just happy to see where it's going, and I can't wait to see more of it.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk, Eric. It's been a good time as well. Appreciate you bringing us on.
Absolutely. And don't forget to subscribe and get lost in the conversation about everything coffee. Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcast. Visit us at JavasJaxie, JAVASJAXIE on Instagram and YouTube. And thank you for joining us and supporting local businesses in your city and around the world.